Big news out of South Carolina in the case for Alec Murdaugh. His murder convictions overturned by the state Supreme Court. So now we're heading to a second trial. What does that look like? Does he take the stand? Does he testify? Is it in the same courthouse or a change of venue? Is there any new evidence in this case? Well, his defense attorney spoke out in a news conference just hours ago. We're going to break it down with a very special guest. Vinnie Politan, one of my good friends who has covered many cases, boots on the ground with me during my time at Court TV. He's going to be right here on the program, and he has a big announcement to share with you about a new show on Court TV and one that you can watch here on YouTube. We're going to talk about it. But first, do me a favor, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Now the case against Alec Murdaugh. Here to help break it all down, we have a very, very special guest, one of my good friends, true crime legend, former prosecutor, host of VPI, Vinnie Politan Investigates, with all new episodes. All the info is going to be in my show notes, so please watch today and moving forward, but we're going to talk about it towards the end. It's nice to see you, my friend.
Great to see you. Congratulations on your setup, your thing. It's like exploding all over the internet. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited to talk to you, especially about this case that we covered when we were at Court TV together, because, you know, now we're heading into the second season almost of this trial. We were boots on the ground. We lived in South Carolina covering this case. It went for more than 6 weeks. What's your overall reaction to South Carolina Supreme Court overturning the murder convictions?
Yeah, it's frustrating, but it had to happen. Once the facts came out, it had to. There's like, you know, man, when you go and cover a case, we avoid the jury. If we're doing a live shot in front of the courthouse and there's a juror back there, we're going to like lower our voices and we're going to talk like this because we don't want to interfere with the process. And in this case, it wasn't a member of the media. It wasn't a member of the public. It was someone who worked for the court who did this. Like it's to me, it's a no-brainer at this point. But it took a while for South Carolina to get there to understand that you can't have people from the courthouse, and she was an important person at the courthouse, talking to the jury about the case. Like, you can't, nobody talks to the jury about the case. The jurors can't even talk to themselves about the case until it's time to deliberate, let alone the court clerk. Like, take the lunch order, you know, find out what the weather's going to be the next day. What are you doing talking about the substance of the case? It's insanity.
And there are allegations that she was back there with the jury saying, don't believe him before they put on their case. It's just shocking. But I mean, here we are. Let's find out how Alex reacted to it, according to his attorneys.
Talked to Alec recently. How does he feel about the overturn?
Yeah, we've talked to Alec a lot lately about many topics, including retrial and what that might look like. But to your specific question, frankly, when we reported back to him after our argument in the South Carolina Supreme Court, we told him it went as well as we could have hoped, and that we were very optimistic that we would get a favorable result. And he appreciated our assessment, but he was incredulous. His experience has been, since he has been on the back end of civil lawsuits and criminal indictments, that he's lost every significant legal ruling along the way. And that occurred almost daily during the trial. And when he got the order, when I spoke with him, he had already read the opinion of the Supreme Court, and he says, I'm reading it, I see it, it says reverse, but I still have a hard time believing it. It's really just sinking in. But he was very grateful and very thankful, and he thanked all of us here that are on this side of the podium, and he got somewhat emotional. He was so, and I don't think he'll mind for me telling you this. I mean, he has always said, and he told me very early, that he deserves to be in jail, prison, for the financial crimes that he committed. But he says, being in jail for something you didn't do is a hard thing to swallow, even though I'm here doing time for what I did do. But then he said, what I was convicted of is so reprehensible. It's something that is so heinous, and to be wrongfully convicted of that is almost unbearable, he says. And so he is very thankful that he's no longer a convicted murderer of his wife and son, and he's appreciative to the court for applying the rule of law, regardless of outcome. They did their job, and we're all very appreciative of that. The rule of law won out last week.
Have you spoken to Buster, and how does he feel about what happened last week?
So yeah, I think thanks for asking that question, and I want to say this: Buster Murdaugh is, hopefully we can all agree, is entitled to his privacy. That kid has been through so much, and that's all he wants is his privacy. And so we're not going to answer questions about Buster, other than to say, and I say it with 100% confidence, that Buster supports his dad, Alec.
Are you surprised that Buster's still supporting Dad? I mean, I sat behind him in the courthouse for a few weeks. He was there each and every day with a girlfriend, now his wife. He has the support of his family. Does that surprise you?
Did I hear Buster say that?
No, you didn't.
I didn't hear Buster. Until I hear Buster say that, I'm not 100% sure. But historically, though, regardless of how old they are or how intelligent they are, etc., the children in cases of spousal murder rarely want to believe that one parent is responsible for taking the life of another. But he sat through the trial. But there have been DNA cases with children who are Yale doctors who still don't believe that the DNA proves that their father is responsible for what happened to their mother. So, but I'm not sure. I have a feeling that he has a few questions and a few doubts, because I don't think it's been the warmest relationship. And we heard some of those phone calls as well. But I don't want to speak for him. I think he does. He's a victim. Like, it's his mom and his brother, right? He didn't commit any crimes here, so he is absolutely a victim in all of this. So he should be treated the same way, I think, as all victims should be treated. So I think we give him the benefit of the doubt. It's a tough spot for him. His life is completely changed, obviously, and hope that he has the support. I think his wife's name is Brooklyn, as I recall. I think that's her name. And I think she's an attorney. So hopefully, they can have some sort of normalcy in their life. Although if they're still in North Carolina, that's going to be difficult. But, and then he's got to sit through another trial. My guess is if he does support his father, he's going to be there, I would think. But he's also, it's about what happened to his mom and his brother. So I can't imagine going through it again, but he may very well have to.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, he has the life sentence regardless of what happens in this case. But the other big question right now, or the headline, is the death penalty. That's being thrown around. What are your thoughts on that before we hear from the attorneys on it?
Yeah, we're back to ground zero on all this, right? Square one, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's as if this is the beginning of the case. So prosecutors have been talking about it. It would change a lot of things in the case. In South Carolina, it impacts jury selection, as it does in any state. And you think about it, who does this help? Like, no one wants to face the death penalty, obviously, but does it give you some level of an advantage? And I think there's almost an advantage for the defense, like, because of the scrutiny that the prospective jurors will go through. You're going to end up with a jury of, like, I call them the leftovers. Not that it's a derogatory sentence, a statement, but all of us live this, right? We live this trial, and we knew some of the evidence before the trial, but after the trial, everybody knew everything. Folks in South Carolina, come on, they know everything. So who ends up on the jury if you're able to really scrutinize each prospective juror? The leftovers, the people who maybe haven't heard anything, right? That's sort of an outlier of society. That's who the defense wants. Also, you would have people that know all of this information, but still it's like, yeah, but I don't know what happened here. You know, nothing's been proven to me, despite everything that we saw and heard. So that, again, to me, puts that prospective juror in the leftover pile. So if you get the death penalty and you have more scrutiny, you end up with leftovers. You know who else ended up with leftovers? I'm going to say it. I'll say the name. I don't like to say it. You know I don't like to say it, but she ended up with leftovers.
Is it
Not that
Casey
there's anything
Anthony?
wrong with that, but it wasn't like everybody else down in Central Florida.
Yeah.
Casey Anthony ended up with the leftovers on her jury in a death penalty case where the scrutiny was great. If this turns into a death penalty case, the same thing could happen here. And you have 12 people who aren't like the rest of everyone else.
Yeah, and they're going to need plenty of alternates too, because it should be another long trial if they admit the evidence that we expect them to, maybe even more. And we'll talk about that. But here's what was said about the death penalty in this news conference, and we'll talk about it some more.
Over the weekend, we learned that the Attorney General has announced he's considering the death penalty in this case. Clearly, he is not talking to the lawyers in his office. He's probably talking to his political consultants who thought that was a good soundbite for his governor's campaign. The law is clear that he cannot seek the death penalty if it is due to vindictive prosecution. That is, and here's the question, what does he know today he didn't know 5 years ago? Why is he saying he's going to seek the death penalty? Is there some new piece of evidence? So we're a little sick and tired, and we've seen this process since the beginning of this case, where Alan Wilson plays politics as opposed to playing prosecutor. He's got great lawyers on his staff. He should listen to them, defer to their judgment.
But yet they don't want it to be a death penalty case, obviously, but yet they want the rules as if the jury was death certified because they want one-on-one voir dire in South Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah. And I listened to him, you know, what's different? What did they learn? Well, Murdaugh testified on the witness stand. So there's a lot of things you could take away from that. And, you know, the way he comported himself on the witness stand. But I you know, how do you prove that it's a vindictive prosecution, right? Like you're going to say, well, you didn't do it last time, so you can't do it this time. Well, it's a brand new case. It's a brand new trial. It's a fresh look at the facts. And we know more facts because your client testified for however long he was on the witness stand, and we learned a lot more. And you know, the fact that he lied about the alibi, et cetera, is I think a big driver of all of this. And that's the biggest hurdle, right, for the defense, is he lied about his alibi. Like that is like the biggest deal of all, because it took them a while for them to be able to get Paul's recording down by the kennel, which became the crucial evidence in the case and proved, with or without Murdaugh's testimony, that he lied about his alibi. So I think there's a good argument. And I was shocked that it wasn't a death penalty from the beginning, by the way. You know, it's cold-blooded, a double killing, and it was done for seemingly like to cover up and distract other crimes that had taken place, to garner sympathy. Like, to me, it was almost like, why didn't they from the get-go go for the death penalty? So we'll see what happens here next time around.
But it was all a distraction because really they would have continued to investigate the whole thing. And you've been to Moselle. The jury, number one, went to Moselle, but you were also there on the roadside where Cousin Eddie was helping him like cover up the attempted, death or suicide, whatever that was. We never got a clear answer. I don't think he testified. I wonder if he's going to be part of trial number 2. But do you think that Murdaugh will take the stand again? He kind of has to. Otherwise, his other words can get read into court, right?
No, they can, and they may get read into court during the case in chief, right? Because any statement against interest, anywhere where you think you have him saying something, you can use it against him. And I've seen it before. The question is, are they just going to admit part of it, or will the judge allow them to pick and choose which statements he made, or do they have to read all the testimony to the jury? And that's usually the way they do it, is they usually read it. Even though we had cameras there, they're going to likely read the testimony in there. I don't think prosecutors need it, but they can use it. Now, will he or won't he testify? That's an interesting question, because the defense made some, they misplayed some things in that first trial that opened the door to extra evidence against Murdaugh. And a lot of it was the financial stuff, the many like excruciating, difficult details that really painted a clear picture of his character, right? And I think that door was further open when he took the witness stand, because again, his character came into question, his truthfulness, etc. And while he tried to admit everything in like 2 lines, yes, I did it, I'm responsible, I took money that wasn't mine and I shouldn't have, and that was his repeating line over and over again. But Creighton Waters and the prosecution were able to get a lot more out of it. I don't think he testifies. I think he learned his lesson, that he cannot, talk his way out of it. And I think the defense will do anything and everything, and I think Murdaugh understands this, to limit how much evidence about all the other things that he did gets in front of the next jury. They want to make it this big instead of how it was in the first case. Keeping him off the stand helps that. Then they'll make their legal arguments to restrict what all of his other victims, his partners, his clients can say about his conduct.
Yeah, because I believe it was after his testimony that it opened the door for more of that evidence, bad character evidence, to come in. And to answer everyone's questions that I always get, it wasn't tears, it was snot, because I was in the courtroom during his testimony. You were there too. And I actually did see, this is very controversial, but I actually did see jury members appear to be wiping away tears. I saw it firsthand. You may not agree with me. I was there. But his attorneys answer the question, is he going to take the stand?
Thought to whether you're going to put him on the stand in the ReTrial?
2 things. 1, the client makes that decision. 2, that'll be a game day call. So you'll know when we know.
When will any retrial take place?
I would suspect within a year of now.
One of the things that we're looking at is a motion to transfer venue to a different county.
In your opinion, what ultimately got Alex convicted?
I think 2.5 weeks of that of widows and orphans and mentally disabled kids testifying, not that he stole their money, but how just maliciously he stole the money, how he lied to them. When they finish with that, they're not going to believe forensic evidence. They're not going to believe him. They're not going to believe anything because he was so vilified.
And when he testified, the jury was programmed not to believe him by the clerk of court. Her name's on the check that they get to payment every week for serving on the jury. And this person is back there in the jury room telling them in so many words, don't believe Alec when he testifies. Don't believe the defense. Don't let them confuse you. All of that happened at the end of the trial, right before we put up our case. So,
what do you think the odds are of Alex getting an acquittal in the retrial?
You, John Monk, are playing those internet betting sites too much. I have no idea what his chances are.
I'm not playing them at all.
Well, you ought to try.
What do you think the odds are?
We have no idea. We don't predict football, basketball, or trials.
We don't predict football, basketball, or trials. You know what? Dick and Jim sure have a way with words.
They do, but how about having a little more confidence about your retrial? He'll be like most of the times, don't defense attorneys say yes. Now that we'll get a fair jury and the facts will come out, justice will prevail. Like they're not extremely confident there. They're kind of wavering a little bit. But I will say this, and as much as we poke fun at defense attorneys from time to time,
they're great. Everyone deserves a defense.
Yes. But I don't know if they're going to get any more money this time around. I don't know if they're going to get it. They may, but they may not. And Jim Griffin did say one thing about staying on the case, and a lot of people are questioning, are they going to stay on the case? Or they're not going to stay on the case. And I was like if they drop him at this point, it makes them. It does more. I think it does more damage to them than it would if they just stayed on and didn't get paid. Right? Like if you kind of left him at this point, like and they're entitled to. They're absolutely entitled to leave him if he can't afford them. And we see that in most of the cases where there are retrials. A lot of times you see a new defense team come in because it's rare that a criminal defendant, unless it's the public defender, is able to afford to go through the whole thing again. So, they're going to stick with it. And I think they're stand-up guys that way.
I see it as it's free advertising. Like they're on Good Morning America. They're on all of the talk shows. They're making all of the headlines, whether they're getting paid or not. It's helping their business, I would imagine.
It does. But I think here it's like that, but it's almost in the reverse. It's like the damage that would ensue if they left him would be such bad publicity. Like if you were a defendant, wouldn't you want someone that's going to stick with you no matter what? Right. And if you saw that they dropped their client, their highest profile client, who didn't get a fair trial first time because of the clerk, and they dropped because, we didn't have another $600,000 to pay them. It might not be good for business. So it's absolutely free advertising. It's great for business. But the downside, if they left him, I think was much greater than the upside they'll get second time around, but they will continue to get it. Then imagine if they win. Could you imagine if first of all, your guy gets convicted, you win an appeal, you uncover all this stuff with Becky Hill, and then you win the second trial for someone who a lot of us, after watching the evidence believed, I think he pretty much did it. It would be amazing. It would be amazing for their careers. And Harpootlian, I think, is at the end of his career. Jim Griffin's still got another, 20 years of doing this stuff.
Oh, they're both super young. I don't know. But, but I mean.
No, Harpootlian was talking about representing Pee Wee 40 years ago. So he's not quite as young as Jim.
They were also asked, would he ever consider a plea deal now that the death penalty is still on the table, and what the trial might look like different. So in season 2. So let's look at the evidence.
Possibility of taking a plea deal for a lesser charge?
No plea deal. No, never will plead guilty. Off the table. We want a trial. Yeah. They can dismiss it.
Yeah, they can dismiss these charges. But he'll never enter to a plea which required some admission that he did something he didn't do, and that's murdering his wife and son. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Who do you think did kill Maggie and Paul?
We wish we knew. We think we could have found out if we had the tools available. I mean, that opportunity was lost when they failed to follow the tire tracks in the grass leading away from the murders of Maggie and Paul. That opportunity was lost when they failed to maintain the integrity of the GPS data on Maggie's phone.
Can we talk about new evidence? I know last week you mentioned DNA evidence under Maggie's fingernails, essentially.
Well, we pointed out during the last trial that they did find unknown male DNA who's not related to any Murdaugh or any of Maggie's family under her fingernail. That was, not really followed up on. We asked that they follow up on that before the last trial. We don't have possession of that DNA, so we can't do anything with it. We can perhaps, with a new case, back to square one, go and seek an order from the court to compel them to send it off to CODIS. CODIS is the national DNA database. If we were in charge and we had the facilities, the forensic lab, they had SLED, and we had search warrant abilities, we would have done things a lot differently and more timely. A lot of that opportunity is lost, and so that's unfortunate.
We have received a number of pieces of information post-trial. Some of them came just to us. Some of that came just to us. Some of that went to SLED too. And we don't know what they did with it. Once the trial was over, we don't have the power to subpoena. We don't have the power to really investigate it all. If a body was found and they wanted to determine time of death, the coroner or a medical examiner would take an anal thermometer and get a core body temperature, then take a thermometer and get the ambient temperature. And in this case, alleged an hour and a half prior they'd been killed, sort of. The coroner showed up and he did something that just amazed me. He took his hand and he stuck it under Paul's armpit. And then that same hand took it under stuck it under Maggie's armpit, and he could calculate the time of death based on that. I mean, that's what we're dealing with here, folks. Stuck his hand under the armpit? Really? And yet, then they said, oh, well, we know when Maggie stopped using her phone and Paul stopped using his phone, that's the time of death. They ignore the fact that cell phone service down there was spotty at best. A number of people testified there was no cell phone service. So simply because they weren't using their phone doesn't mean they were dead. I mean, this thing has more holes in it than Swiss cheese.
These were the questions that I actually had while watching the trial, and they could have doubled down on them, but they didn't, right? Like, why couldn't they investigate the DNA? Why couldn't they have done that?
Right.
Why couldn't they have like brought up the tire tracks more or the GPS stuff? I thought all of that was so strange, but instead, I don't remember them focusing on that as their defense.
And I think there'll be a lot more focus on that, and they're going to focus. I think they're going to have new and better experts. The defense will have, and all these things again lead to a stronger case second time around for them, which is unusual. Usually, prosecutors are stronger second time around. Here, there's no doubt that the defense is going to be armed and ready second time around. The other thing about the death penalty, circling back to that, death penalty cases, the scrutiny is just higher, we know, in the appellate process, right? But the other part of it is, if you're a judge and you're overseeing a death penalty case, and this case has once already been, overturned, suddenly I think the defense also has a better shot at some of their pretrial motions. I think they'll get a little more benefit of the doubt. They may get some more favorable rulings than they did first time around, because number one, it'll be a new judge. The judge knows, again, this case has been overturned. And if it's death penalty, they know the incredible scrutiny that the case will be under. So you put all those factors together, and again, the defense has an opportunity here. The evidence is still the evidence. He still lied about the alibi and everything else. So it's not like we're saying Murdaugh's going to walk, but he's in a much better position in season 2.
How do you think that the lawsuit is going to impact the criminal trial?
It has been adjudged as a matter of state law that she deprived Alec of his constitutional rights, deprived him of a right to a fair trial. And as a result, we've got to do it all over again, which nobody wants to do. The damages that we've alleged include the over $600,000 that was spent to try the first case and other compensatory damages. Now, let me be clear. Alec Murdaugh owes a lot of people a lot of money. None of this money that is recovered will go to him personally. And the purpose of this lawsuit is to hold Becky Hill accountable.
I think they're searching for something. There's a financial part of it, right? So they're seeking the money that was spent first time around. But will that money go to the defense if they win this lawsuit against Becky? Is there an insurance policy that's in play? Because liability seems pretty clear, right? Because the Supreme Court made the ruling. There's no ruling greater than that in South Carolina, that, Becky, her actions are responsible for him not getting a fair trial and there being a second trial. A lot of people were talking about Becky should pay the state for the cost to retry the case. But how about Becky paying Murdaugh, who's filed this lawsuit, for retrying the case? And when we say Becky, she was a public officer, so there had to be some insurance policy that may, in fact, cover some of this. So they may actually get money. Then the question is, when that money, if and when that money's awarded to Murdaugh, can that money go to his defense, or does that money have to go to creditors, like all the people that he ripped off, whether it's his law partners or his clients, do they get that money? It's probably his law partners, because I think the law partners have tried to make all those clients whole. Like they all stepped up big time to try to make those clients whole. But where that becomes another battle, if in fact he's able to collect on this lawsuit, if there's an insurance policy, because I don't know what you're going to get from Becky Hill. Like, I don't know how many copies of that book were sold, but
I don't think it's available anymore. I forgot about the book.
You forgot about that. Was the whole thing, was the book. Like, so is the book a collectible now that maybe you know, if you have a copy of it, it's worth something? I don't know.
It used to be in your office. You know what people don't know is our offices were right next door to each other. And,
I had an original Becky Hill. Yeah. So we'll see how that plays out, but it could impact it that way. Maybe it could pay the price for some experts. Number one. Number two, they want to really uncover how this whole thing went down, because there was an investigation, but we don't know much about that investigation into how the egg lady was dismissed and what exactly Becky Hill said. Is there anyone else involved here? Because they may be fishing. They may be fishing for, you know, some sort of conspiracy, dare I say, by law enforcement. And
that's what they're going for, because they were bringing up the egg lady quite a bit. They were bringing up one of their talking points over and over in this news conference. I think they said it at least 3 times, is who else is involved? Is it just Becky? But
was Trooper Proctor down in South Carolina on vacation? I think that's the question. If Proctor was there, they may be onto something here.
Okay, let's stick with South Carolina. Let's play some clips about the lawsuit.
The purpose of this lawsuit is to hold Becky Hill accountable for what she did. She has not been held account at all for her conduct. And two is to investigate exactly what she did, which we'll be able to do through the course of civil litigation. We have subpoena power. We can take depositions. And so we're going to be able to understand the entire scope of her conduct. She's yet to be thoroughly investigated by the state, and she's not been held accountable by the state. And that's what we hope to do. And that's what we intend to do. And that's what we will do with this lawsuit.
Final thoughts on the case.
Final thoughts. I understand why we're here. I understand the frustration. But I think we always have to remember, when I say we, it's you, it's me, it's all of us, that our system of criminal justice is always bigger than any single case. And sometimes the most painful decisions that are made by courts protect our system. And I think that's what happened here, right? There was absolutely a breach of responsibility here. There was a breaching into the jury process. And when that happens, you can't stand. You can't, like, a lot of times courts will, you know, they know the conclusion they want, which is, we don't want to try this case again. Let's figure out some legal gymnastics to get us there. And you couldn't here. This is the jury. Nobody talks to the jury. The jury doesn't talk to anyone about the case until they deliberate, period, end of story. And here it was someone from the court. So we have to have a second trial. And unfortunately for Creighton Waters, unfortunately for prosecutors, and perhaps unfortunately for the people of the state of South Carolina, Alec Murdaugh is going to gain some benefit going into the second trial that he did not have first time around.
Yeah, and our thoughts go out to the family. You know, you and I talk about this a lot, about the victims. They're victimized forever for their lifetime. They get the life sentence, like Maggie's sister and other people that have had to testify. Our thoughts go out to them as this makes its way through the court system again. You know what? I miss you, my friend, but I'm excited for you because you have some news.
Yeah. Vinnie Politan Investigates. We are back. Brand new season. 8:00 every night on Court TV, but we'll also be right here on YouTube. on Court TV's YouTube channel. So the format is a little different. It's going to be a little bit more like the new media podcast kind of vibe, because that's where true crime is living these days. But it'll still be on TV. So if people like to watch TV, you can watch me on TV, or you can watch me at your convenience on YouTube right after you watch Matt Johnson's show.
Yeah, well, I'll have all the details in my show notes. And then also, you're still doing this podcast as well, right?
Oh yeah, me, Alan Jonesy, the Tangent True Crime Podcast, and we'll be out at CrimeCon as well on Creator Row. We're continuing that, and that's so much fun. You know, Alan Jonesy and I first. All three of us were together at Court TV Radio on Sirius XM when we did a morning show. Al was one of our regular guests. Jonesy was like producer / sidekick, and it was a great show. It was a great vibe. It ended. We didn't want it to end, and then 20 years later, we got the boys in the band back together, and we're having a blast here on YouTube and Facebook and everywhere else. So, Tangent True Crime Podcast. We talk about the cases, but sometimes we go off on these tangents. Like, you never know what we're going to talk about.
No,
although
guys?
it's usually about days gone by.
Is it really?
Younger
like
days.
war stories?
A lot war stories. We talk about 70s cop shows. Who knows? And a lot of music in the Tangent Podcast as well. A lot of music. So.
Well, it's a fun show. I've watched it a few times. I've jumped in the chat. You've been so gracious to promote my channel, and I love what you're doing, and continued success. And I hope to see you soon in person, my friend.
Yes. Ditto.
All right. Thanks, Vinny.
See you later, Matt.
That's going to do it for this episode. Please hit the like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend. Let's bring that true crime family back together, and I'll see you at CrimeCon. In the meantime, I'll keep you updated on this case and others. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.